A long time ago, a powerful group of people started stripping resources from ancient ruins they should have left alone. The ruins' guardians didn't take that lightly and released a bunch of ancient monsters to punish them. These monsters were absolute nightmares, and they successfully chased away every last miner from the site. The monsters lived among humans for a while, but our world didn't suit them, so they gradually turned into spiritual bodies. To survive, they started looking for human hosts to latch onto. Fast forward to today, and the city is looking gloomier than ever under a constant storm. The news is full of warnings about mutated lifeforms hurting people, telling everyone to stay safe. It's a rainy day at the Line 1 subway station exit. A train pulls into the platform, completely unaware of the chaos brewing inside. Inside the cars, the air is thick with exhaustion and depression from the crowded commute. In the middle of it all is a guy with his headphones on, looking like he's in his own world. This is Qin Xi, a recent college grad who's just trying to vibe to his music and ignore the crowd. He's not exactly a high achiever, failed his major and got kicked out by his family, so he moved here just to scrape by. A nearby security officer is standing guard, but there's something terrifying creeping up behind him. The atmosphere suddenly thickens. Right behind the guard, a massive shadow looms, swallowing the last remnants of light in the subway car. A giant, red-eyed bear monster is literally breathing down the guard's neck while he's asleep on his feet. Those razor-sharp teeth are dripping with saliva. The passengers nearby start to notice, and their faces turn pale with pure terror. Suddenly, the whole car erupts into screams as people scramble to get away from the beast. Someone yells to watch out, and Qin Xi pulls off his headphones, looking more annoyed than anything. He thinks to himself that this city is just too much to handle sometimes. But then he sees someone lying dead on the floor in a pool of blood. The bear monster starts tearing the car apart, screaming about demolishing everything in sight. Panic hits a fever pitch as everyone realizes they're trapped with an evil mutated life form. These ancient spirits feed on the evil in people's hearts and transform them into these monsters. This host was clearly consumed by rage, and now he's just a mindless beast obsessed with destruction. He goes completely berserk, ready to slaughter anyone who gets in his way. Qin Xi stares in shock. He's seen these things in videos, but the real deal is a million times scarier. The train's intercom calmly announces the next station, while people are fighting for their lives. The monster smashes a passenger straight through a window like they weigh nothing. People are being thrown around like ragdolls as the beast charges through the car. The doors finally open, but it's a total bottleneck. Passengers start trampling each other, desperately trying to shove their way out of the car. Qin Xi gets shoved hard as the crowd panics. The station platform turns into a war zone as people scream for help. Purses and phones are left abandoned on the bloody floor as everyone flees. Qin Xi is gasping for air, sweating as he realizes how bad this is. He looks up to see the monster standing over several people who didn't make it. The beast is still roaring about demolishing graves and reclaiming land. Qin Xi figures the host was some professional thug who let his emotions turn him into a monster. He spots an open door and thinks he just needs to find the right moment to make a run for it. But then he spots a terrified old woman and a little girl cowering in the corner. Qin Xi prepares to make his move, thinking back to his college track days where he never actually won anything. But he isn't the only one watching. A pair of glowing eyes is observing the chaos from the shadows. A mysterious voice chuckles in the dark, finally finding the young man they've been looking for. "Hey, over here!" Qin Xi shouts, making himself the center of attention. He darts past the beast, leading it away from the crowd before it can hurt anyone else. He keeps the insults coming to make sure the monster stays focused on him. He hits a dead end at the train doors and realizes he isn't quite as fast as he used to be. The bear monster towers over him, ready to demolish his latest target. Safe behind the security gates, the little girl screams for someone to save the brave guy who rescued them. A massive blow connects, and Qin Xi coughs up a spray of blood. The impact sends him flying across the car and slams him into the floor. He lies on the ground, bleeding and struggling to stay conscious. The monster snarls, closing in for the kill. Qin Xi realizes he's in deep trouble. He completely miscalculated his chances of survival. He looks up and sees the old woman and the girl he saved, realizing that at least they're safe now. Is this it? Am I really going to die here? He wonders as everything starts to go dark. The girl is hysterical, begging the guards to go back in, but they're focused on getting the civilians clear. The infantry captain arrives and orders her team not to move. The mutated life form is their priority now. A thick, oily black energy begins to ooze from the train, surging toward both him and the monster. He can't believe his luck to finally do something good and end up like this. He clenches his fist, his nails digging into the cold floor. He's not ready to give up yet, His life is just getting started, even if it has been a mess so far. Deep in his mind, the memories of a lifetime of failure start to surface. He remembers being a disappointment at home, always compared to the successful neighbor's kid while he played games. He thinks back to the bullies who used him for entertainment and called it friendship. Then there was the girl he liked, who told him he was destined to be a failure before turning her back on him. The pain and humiliation boil over, and he coughs up more blood, fueled by pure spite. He's panting for breath, struggling to stay awake. A single thought echoes in his mind: I want to win just once. The bear monster raises a fist to finish him off. At that moment, a stream of black energy was hurtling straight toward them. Qin Xi lets out a desperate roar, a final cry to live and win. At the exact moment before the blow descended, a golden dragon soul rushed straight ahead and plunged into Tran Hai's body, taking over his body. The energy crackles around him, turning the air electric. The ancient monster spirit fully manifests, laughing and saying it's been a long time. Qin Xi stares up at the spirit in disbelief, convinced this has to be some kind of near-death hallucination. He thinks he's seeing things as his life fades away. But the spirit tells him this is no illusion, and that a worthless death is for other people, not him. Black, jagged armor starts growing over his skin, fusing with his body. The bear monster's next attack is effortlessly deflected. Now partially transformed, Qin Xi catches the beast's fist and counters with incredible force. He stands there fully transformed into a demonic warrior, as the spirit promises him the power he's always craved. Transformed Qin Xi looks down at his foe with a menacing grin, finally having the power to fight back. The bear monster is battered and terrified by the sudden reversal of fortune. With a single, devastating punch, Qin Xi sends the massive beast crashing back through the subway car. He inspects his new claws, feeling the incredible power coursing through them. The ancient monster spirit within him explains that these claws are designed to sever the bond between a host and their parasite. He prepares to strike again, the air around him crackling with dark energy. Time for some surgery. He laughs, lunging forward with blinding speed. He aims for the heart of the beast, promising to set the human host free from its monstrous burden. A clean strike tears through the monster's physical form, releasing a torrent of dark energy. The human host collapses onto the subway floor, his transformation finally undone. He gasps and retches, his body rejecting the last remnants of the parasite. The bear spirit is forced out of the man's body, manifesting as a frantic blue phantom. Qin Xi looks the spectral bear right in the eyes, greeting it like an old friend. The phantom bear lets out a silent, terrified roar as it tries to flee for its life. But there's no escape. Qin Xi reaches out and snatches the spirit right out of the air. He pins the struggling entity down, making sure it can't slip away. To him, this isn't just a monster, it's high-quality food. He opens his jaws wide, ready to finish his meal. With one massive gulp, he swallows the bear's spirit whole. He wipes his mouth with a look of pure disgust, laughing at the terrible aftertaste. Soldiers are closing in, shouting that the target is right ahead. In the foreground, Qin Xi stands transformed, his new horns and dark armor marking him as something other than human. He glares back, realizing the security department is already on his tail. The protagonist grunts as the weight of the situation finally hits him. The transformation isn't stable. Qin Xi struggles to keep it together, begging for the change to stop at such a bad time. His face begins to crack, revealing his human features beneath the monstrous mask. He stares at his hands, now tipped with lethal red claws. Catching his reflection in the subway window, he finally sees what he's become. He clutches his head in a panic, screaming as the reality of the mutation sets in. In the middle of the subway car, he panics over the horns on his head, while the soldiers behind him are just as confused, wondering what kind of cosplay this is supposed to be. The masked units don't hesitate, leveling their weapons at the anomaly. Qin Xi looks over at the man who was the bear monster's host, now just a husk slumped in a seat. He looks down at his claws, stunned that he was the one who actually took the beast down. A spectral dragon head manifests behind him, casually explaining that it's the one that saved his life. Looking at the drooling host, Qin Xi worries he's committed murder, but the spirit tells him the guy just passed out. The piece is broken as the soldiers open fire. Tracers zip past as the boy maneuvers through the cramped car. He leaps onto the ceiling, demanding to know who this voice is and why it's controlling his body. The entity ignores the questions, insisting they need to get out of there first. A dart catches him in the shoulder, and the spirit notes their synchronization isn't perfect yet. Another one hits him right in the rear. He yelps, complaining that it actually tickles. Seeing him unaffected, the soldiers realize their tranquilizers are useless. One of them pulls out a shock grenade, hopping to stun the target. Qin Xi prepares to jump, as the spirit tells him to leave the heavy lifting to them. A savage grin spreads across his face as the monster takes full control. He launches himself through the air as explosions rock the train. With a casual swipe, he bats a grenade away and bids the soldiers a mocking farewell. He smashes right through the subway window, heading for the outside world. The glass shatters outward, forcing the soldiers to shield their eyes. He crashes through the barriers, moving with speed no human could match. In a single massive leap, he clears the tracks and heads for the city rooftops. Outside, the station is a mess of smoke and sirens as more backup arrive. A gray dog sniffs the ground near the feet of a high-ranking officer. The infantry captain steps onto the scene, her expression stern as she asks if the target has been apprehended. Her team reports that the target is far more agile than they expected. She doesn't take the news well, calling the entire squad a disappointment. The dog, Bufeng, leans in to sniff the unconscious host. The captain stares out at the broken window where the target made his escape. She tells Bufeng they're running out of time and need results immediately. The dog lets out a yawn and decides it's time to drop the act. Its face twists and distorts, morphing into something far more humanoid. Bufeng sheds his animal skin, revealing a pale, gaunt man crouching on the floor. He slips on a jacket, admitting that he usually stays in dog form because it's more approachable. The captain just finds it more efficient for communication. Bufeng and the infantry captain examine the damage. Based on the claw marks, the mystic is certain they've found their man. He deduces that a newly formed spirit in a fresh host is unstable. It couldn't have made it far. The captain makes it clear that the security bureau is dead weight, but she could definitely use a talent like Bufeng on her side. Bufeng isn't interested in a permanent position, preferring to keep his independence. He explains that every mystic is unique and not suited for joining any particular organization. Suddenly, he stops in his tracks, signaling for a moment of silence. He takes a seat right there on the train car to begin his work. The captain isn't happy about the delay, but he cuts her off. He's busy sensing the target's energy. He adds a catch, finding this guy is going to cost her extra. She doesn't blink, promising he'll be well compensated. Bufeng closes his eyes, sinking into a deep trance. A strange aura begins to radiate from his body, filling the subway car. Miles away, his energy waves ripple through the city streets, seeking out the intruder. Qin Xi is still on the move, his monstrous form covering ground with every stride. He glances back, feeling an invisible weight pressing down on him. On the train, the strain is visible on Bufeng's face as he pushes his powers to the limit. He manages to make contact, but what he finds isn't just a simple spirit. It's something far more ancient and terrifying. The mystic winces, his mind reeling from the raw power he's just touched. A horrific vision of a multi-eyed beast looms in his mind's eye. He tried to break out of that state, gasping for breath and looking completely shaken. Sweat pours down his face as he realizes the magnitude of what they're hunting. In his mind, the dragon's spirit mocks him, calling his tracking technique way too creepy. Bufeng is left trembling, the encounter leaving him physically drained. He looks up at the captain, confirming that he's finally located the target. Her eyes narrow with predatory focus. Bufeng sits slumped over, exhausted and muttering that he's found him. The captain immediately prepares to mobilize her forces. The mystic is so spent, he can barely hold his head up. She barks orders for a medical team to attend to him while she prepares to move out. She grabs him by the collar, demanding the exact location before he passes out. He manages to choke out the words, District 9. She takes a moment to process the location and plan her next move. The captain calls for her specialist, a figure known only as Flying Squirrel. The speedster drops into a low stance, ready for the hunt. In a flash of blue energy, he's gone, leaving nothing but a shockwave in his wake. The captain watches him go with a smirk, confident that no one can outrun her best agent. Flying Squirrel blurs across the city skyline like a bolt of lightning. High above, Qin Xi is still leaping from one skyscraper to the next. His human side is finally surfacing, and he asks the spirit how much longer it plans to occupy his body. The spirit responds by telling him they're inseparable now, part of the same whole. Qin Xi isn't exactly thrilled with the arrangement, mostly because he's terrified of heights and starting to feel nauseous. The spirit ignores his complaining, warning him that descending isn't safe with potential sorcerers tracking them. Qin Xi yells out, desperate to get back on solid ground before he loses his lunch. The dragon spirit scolds Qin Xi for panicking while they're still in the air. Qin Xi looks absolutely terrified as the ground rushes up to meet him. He flails in his monstrous form, unable to control his frantic descent. He crashes hard through several structures, finally slamming into a pile of trash in a narrow alley. Groaning in pain, he slowly pushes himself up, feeling the full impact of the fall. The spirit inside him calls him a stubborn fool, reminding him that its armor was the only thing that kept him from being killed. With the spirit's energy depleted, the monster's skin dissolves, leaving Qin Xi on his own for the time being. Qin Xi pulls up his hood and starts walking, ignoring the spirit's questions about where he's going. He leaves a trail of monster ichor behind on the pavement as he makes his escape. Nearby, an old man is being hounded by armored security bureau guards. He begs for mercy, claiming he's just a hungry civilian. Qin Xi watches from the shadows, his heart racing as he sees the brutality of the bureau. He breaks into a cold sweat, realizing that if those red-eyed guards find him, he's in deep trouble. He remains hidden as the squad of soldiers marches past his position. The city streets are filled with the tension of an active manhunt. Once the coast is clear, he lets out a long sigh of relief, thankful that he hasn't been spotted yet. He keeps a low profile, peeking out from behind a large dumpster to check for more patrols. The spirit suggests they head for a shelter near the clock tower to hide out and regroup. It warns him that his home is no longer safe. The security bureau won't miss a single detail. When the spirit asks if he's worried about someone he left behind, Qin Xi's expression suddenly shifts. He starts to tear up, realizing he forgot to delete his browser history and sensitive files from his hard drive. The spirit is completely baffled that he's worried about his private movies, while his life is on the line. Qin Xi continues through the desolate backstreets, feeling the weight of his new reality. He stops as he senses something or someone watching him from above. In an instant, several glowing energy beams snap into existence around him. A pursuer dropped from the sky, his boots moving nimbly as he leaped and bounded. Tran Hai was completely outclassed by this speed. The man even used his body as a stepping stone. A masked man with glowing red eyes stares him down, telling him to stay exactly where he is. The pursuer perches upside down on a pipe, mockingly telling Qin Xi that he's under arrest. With incredible agility, the man leaps from his perch, closing the distance in the blink of an eye. He lands gracefully, effectively blocking Qin Xi's path. The antagonist, known as the Demolisher, offers him a deal. Hand over the parasitic spirit and he can have his freedom back. Qin Xi clenches his jaw. The spirit urges him to fight, knowing that freedom is the last thing they'll give him. Deciding to trust the voice in his head, Qin Xi agrees to fight together. The Demolisher thinks he's surrendered and orders him to kneel down. Instead, Qin Xi lunges forward with a smirk, calling the spirit a heartless jerk for making him fight. He lands a solid punch right on the masked hunter's face. The man barely flinches, dismissively calling Qin Xi's attack a boring and predictable move. Seeing the need for more power, the spirit manifests a jagged, glowing gauntlet over Qin Xi's hand. Qin Xi feels a surge of power and thanks the spirit for the new weapon. He strikes again, the new weapon glowing with a fierce red light as it makes contact with the enemy's guard. The force of the blow sends the Demolisher reeling, surprised by the sudden increase in strength. The alleyway erupts in a shockwave of energy as the two combatants clash with full force. Qin Xi admires the jagged weapon on his hand, mistakenly calling it a knuckle duster, though the spirit quickly corrects him that it is a claw. The spirit explains that this isn't just any weapon. It's a divine tool forged by its ancient companions from the spirit world. The Demolisher's expression hardens as he declares that attacking a security officer is a grave crime, officially escalating the situation to a forced arrest. Qin Xi's eyes glow with a new resolve as he refuses to surrender his freedom or his companion, earning a rare word of praise from the spirit. Feeling more confident than ever, Qin Xi challenges the hunter to a fight, shouting that he's finally fired up and ready to go all out. The hunter's eyes burn with a menacing red light as he vows that Qin Xi will pay dearly for choosing the path of resistance. The War-Squirrel host lunges out of the shadows, demanding a surrender. Ao shouts a warning as the attacker lunges down from above. Qin Xi takes a heavy blow and gets slammed into the wall. He stumbled back to his feet after that last hit, while Ao kept advising him to focus on the legs. Qin Xi catches his breath, knowing he needs to step up his reaction time. Red claws erupt from his hands as he prepares to go on the offensive. He lunges forward with a powerful strike, but the War-Squirrel is ready. A counterattack sends Qin Xi crashing into a pile of trash cans. Ao manifests beside him, telling him not to worry since he's there to help. Qin Xi snaps back, telling the spirit to shut it with the useless advice. Ao just reminds him that he's the reason his bones aren't currently in pieces. The War-Squirrel isn't giving them any breathing room and charges right back in. While searching for a counter-strategy, Tran Hai's eyes locked onto a fire extinguisher. Without a moment's hesitation, he reached out, grabbed the extinguisher, and hurled it straight at the War-Squirrel. With a flash of his claws, the War-Squirrel sliced through the flying canister, splitting it in half midair. The sliced extinguisher exploded into a blinding haze, obscuring everything in sight. From within the mist, the beast's voice growled, "What a nuisance you are." While the Wursquirrel scanned the haze for his target, Tran Hai suddenly lunged through the smoke, shouting in frustration about how he's constantly being forced into these fights. The two of them trade a flurry of blows, neither one willing to back down. With powerful strikes from his owl-enhanced claws, Qin Xi relentlessly overwhelmed his opponent, forcing him into a constant state of defense. The impact is massive, forcing the creature to skid back across the asphalt. The Wursquirrel stumbles, caught completely off guard by this relentless pace while struggling to keep his footing. He looked down at his body, realizing those claws had inflicted countless wounds all over him. Panting heavily, Qin Xi realizes he's still got some fight left in him. Suddenly, purple energy began to swirl around the Wursquirrel as his madness reached its breaking point. Qin Xi watches in horror as the beast vows to rip him into shreds. Watching the transformation unfold, Ao realized they were up against a heteromorph and let out a boisterous laugh at the discovery. But they were running out of time for this fight. Looking into the distance, Ao noticed the security agency had deployed a fleet of drones to join the hunt. Ao urged him to strike now to disrupt the enemy's transformation, explaining that the parasitic spirit was trying to seize full control of its host. Qin Xi lands another strike, disrupting the delicate balance between man and monster. He realizes his attack actually severed the connection between the two. The host's face contorts in pain as the synchronization starts to fail. Black energy spikes out from the Wursquirrel, refusing to let go of its vessel. The monster roars, demanding that Qin Xi hand over the spirit inside him. Staring at the transformation, Qin Xi was haunted by memories of the horrific tragedy back on that train. Ao notes that the host's desperation has triggered a full beastification. The massive creature lunges forward with a deafening roar. With its strength and speed now completely transformed, Qin Xi found himself utterly unable to fight back. A flurry of strikes came from the front and then the back in a flash of flickering shadows, leaving only powerful shockwaves that slammed directly into Qin Xi's body. The mutated wolf's terrifying speed generated a dark wave of energy that swept through the alleyway. The Wursquirrel beast curled into a lethal spinning ball, charging straight toward him like a deadly blur. Ao shouts for him to move left, and Qin Xi narrowly avoids the lethal spin. Grit his teeth, Qin Xi hears Ao's warning that neither of them can keep this up for long. Qin Xi skids across the pavement, digging his heels in to stop his momentum. He yells out that it's time to go all out, his face twisted in determination. He thrust his claws forward, bracing himself to halt the spinning orb's momentum. Arg! Qin Xi lets out a gut-wrenching scream as he pours every ounce of strength into holding back the beast. Glowing eyes signal that Ao is manifesting, the dragon's spirit merging with his will. With a sudden burst of power, Qin Xi flings the Wursquirrel backward, narrowly escaping a fatal blow. The impact is massive, sending the Wursquirrel host hurtling down the street and past terrified bystanders. Wiping sweat from his brow, Qin Xi exhales while Ao laughs about their perfect coordination. A confident smirk plays on his lips as he realizes just how much power they have together. But as they scan the area outside the alley, all that remained was a truck with a massive dent in its trailer. The beast had vanished into thin air. Qin Xi scans the area, looking for any sign of his opponent. Panic sets in for the locals as Qin Xi realizes the Wursquirrel has vanished into thin air again. Above the narrow street, a dark shadow leaps between the rooftops, stalking its prey. Qin Xi catches a movement from the corner of his eye and looks up. Suddenly, the massive Wursquirrel appears right in front of him, glowing eyes full of murderous intent. Qin Xi doesn't hesitate, swinging his red-hot claws in a wide arc. A cloud of dust and debris explodes where the creature was just standing. His eyes go wide with shock when he realizes he just struck a lingering afterimage. A voice whispers right behind his ear, taunting him that he's already lost. Before he can react, the Wursquirrel wraps a powerful arm around his neck. Qin Xi grits his teeth as the chokehold tightens, realizing he's been backed into a corner. His vision begins to blur, and he knows he's only seconds away from passing out. The Wursquirrel lets out a triumphant laugh, already celebrating his successful capture. Clinging to his last shred of consciousness, Qin Xi struggled to ask if the exoskeleton was available, but Ao warned that it was still recharging its energy. Drool escapes the corner of his mouth as his consciousness starts to slip away. Staring death in the face, Ao offered a sincere apology, admitting that he truly enjoyed the brief time they spent together. The spirit thanks him for being such a compatible host before they both fade away. Suddenly, Qin Xi's eyes snap open, refusing to accept defeat just yet. He shouts that it's too early for goodbyes and prepares for one final, desperate move. With a sudden eruption of latent power, He delivered a 1,000-pound blow directly into his own stomach. The blow was so powerful that it caused Qin Xi to lose consciousness completely. As his consciousness faded into nothingness, it forced Ao's spirit to manifest outside the host's body. Seeing Ao's spirit manifest, the beast immediately abandoned Qin Xi and charged straight at him. A massive explosion of yellow energy catches the squirrel square in the jaw. The beast's jaws snapped on nothing but a lingering afterimage. Ao sneered at the pathetic rodent before hurtling back into Qin Xi's vessel like a bolt of lightning. With a sharp crackle of energy, the assimilation began, merging the spirit and the host into one. Qin Xi's eyes flared with a cold, blue light as his power was completely reset. He lunges through the air, his claws glowing with a divine severance power. He declares that this strike will end the misery by cutting the parasitic bond once and for all. The final blow lands with an earth-shaking thud, a cross of energy burning into the enemy. Qin Xi lands on his feet, his gaze fixed on the fallen monster. The squirrel is consumed by a dark, swirling cloud of smoke as the battle finally concludes. Lying defeated in the dirt, the squirrel host gasps in disbelief, unable to fathom how he was bested. A crackle of electricity fills the air as the purple energy dragon soars away, leaving Qin Xi standing alone in the debris-strewn alley. As it fled the host's body, the squirrel's spirit began to flicker and panic, its form becoming unstable. It streaked past Qin Xi in a desperate escape, leaving behind a faint purple trail in its wake. Staring at the fleeing spirit, Ao commented on their narrow escape and scolded Qin Xi for being so reckless. But Qin Xi didn't give a damn, instead snapping back and asking why the dragon didn't just devour the enemy on the spot. The ancient spirit found himself speechless at his host's attitude. His glowing eyes stared fixedly at the road ahead with an unreadable expression. As he walked toward the light at the end of the alley, the ancient spirit dismissed the idea, claiming he preferred human food instead. But Qin Xi sarcastically bet that the dragon couldn't have caught the enemy anyway. Their footsteps echo through the quiet street as they leave the scene of the battle behind. Left behind in the shadows, the squirrel host struggles to his feet, cursing the failure of his mission. Suddenly, a squad of heavily armored soldiers with glowing red optics emerges from the darkness, their weapons drawn and ready. Frustrated and cornered, the squirrel host demands that they contact Captain Bu immediately to report the situation. One of the soldiers stares him down, seemingly confused by the mention of the captain. The soldier coldly informs him that he is unwelcome in the 9th District as he levels his massive energy cannon at the host. A violent blast rocks the alleyway, the impact leaving a scorched crater where the intruder once stood. Far away, a monolithic skyscraper pierces the stormy clouds, lightning illuminating its sleek modern facade. Inside the high-tech command center, military officials gather around a holographic display while Ming Liang, the governor of the security department, notes the rising frequency of rogue symbiont attacks. The hologram highlights various hotspots across the city, as another officer points out that Captain Bu's team is monopolizing all the major operations. Ming Liang, introduced as the governor of the security department, is an elder man with a menacing, wide-toothed grin and a glowing purple eye who sarcastically praises the great hero of Chihuang City. The infantry captain, a blonde woman with a sharp, calculating gaze, remains silent as she observes the discussion. Zhang Chun, a man with slick-back green hair introduced as the 9th District commander, questions why the captain's forces have encroached upon his jurisdiction. He points to the data on the screen, emphasizing that the current capture mission is merely a step toward securing the elusive symbiont for analysis. Zhang Chun lets out a mocking laugh, finding the difficulty of capturing such a tough symbiont to be amusing. He scoffs at the idea of mobilizing the entire department for what he considers a small fry, calling the operation an overkill. The infantry captain closes her eyes, masking her irritation at the commander's dismissive attitude. Zhang Chun intervenes, revealing that the operation was also a field test for a new project he authorized, and tells Zhang Chun to stay out of the 9th District's internal affairs. Shocked by the revelation, the infantry captain turns to the governor, her voice rising as she asks about the nature of this new project. With a smug expression, Ming Liang explains that the higher-ups only trust the Bu team with such critical assignments, leaving others on the sidelines. He tries to placate her by suggesting that the command of the unzoned 11th District will eventually be hers, urging her not to be so impatient. Gritting her teeth, the infantry captain struggles to maintain her composure in the face of such blatant favoritism. Fed up with the political maneuvering, she abruptly ends the meeting, citing official duties as she walks away with her guards. Walking down the sterile corridor, she remains lost in thought, her face shadowed with frustration. Her phone vibrates and she answers it with a sharp hello. Who is this? On the other end, the voice of the mysterious Grand Mystic, Bu Feng, offers his services to find her target, though he demands a steep price for his help. Qin Xi tries to lose himself in the crowd as he navigates the busy city streets at night. He pulls out his phone and sees the worst. The city is under emergency state, and his face is on the wanted list. He taps into the details, realizing just how deep of a hole he's in. The database has everything: his name, age, and his new status as a symbiont host. The ancient monster manifests beside him, mocking him for being a celebrity who's lost his freedom. A notification pops up for the Yejilin forum, with dozens of new posts from the underground. Qin Xi stares at the screen, desperately looking for any lead he can use. He clicks on the forum icon, hoping the local community board has some answers. The board is a mess of ghost stories and reports of people losing their minds to parasites. Ao smirked at the website's bizarre slogan about wild chickens and phoenixes, dismissing it as total bullshit. Seeing Ao's reaction, Qin Xi explained the hidden meaning. It symbolized a forum reborn from its own ashes, destined to never truly die. It's an intel hub for the city's underbelly, but right now, survival is the only thing on his mind. He knows he needs to find the clock-tower shelter to figure out how to extract this thing and be human again. Living with a parasite for the rest of his life isn't an option he's willing to accept. Qin Xi continued. Someone just posted that the authorities are shutting down the entire communication network. Panicked, he reaches to power off his phone to stay off the grid. The dragon calls him an idiot, pointing out that even a dead phone still pings the local signal towers. He looks up and realizes he's too late. A dozen gun barrels are already locked onto him. A full squad of security forces has him surrounded right in the middle of a crosswalk. With nowhere to run, he lets the ancient monster take over, shadows wrapping around his body. He fully transforms, encased in a dark, dragon-like exoskeleton. The armored beast's eyes glow with a fierce yellow light as it assesses the threat. The soldiers don't hesitate, opening fire with their energy rifles. Qin Xi is too fast, becoming a blur as he strikes before they can even adjust their aim. He launches a series of spinning blades from his armor that tear through the air. He carves through the squad with glowing slashes, leaving nothing but sparks and broken metal in his wake. In a matter of seconds, the entire security unit is incapacitated. But then, a heavy armored infantry captain robot stepped out, blocking his path. The captain robot aimed its massive arm cannon, charging up with a distinctive humming sound as a blue light flickered. A massive beam fires, heading straight for the dragon-clad host. He barely manages to sidestep the incoming projectile as it screams past him. The energy bolt misses its mark and continues down the empty street. He doesn't give them a chance for a second shot, leaping straight at the heavy unit. A powerful claw strike slams directly into the captain's reinforced plating. With a single slash, he cut the robot clean in half. Ao grumbled that these things were nothing more than a nuisance blocking their way. He makes a break for the old clock tower looming over the city skyline. Inside, the air is thick with dust as old wood creaks under his weight. Now back in human form, he explores the massive, hollow interior of the tower. As he walks past giant rusted gears, the monster assures him that here, he's officially off the radar. He pushed the door open, allowing a flood of light to spill into the pitch-black room. Qin Xi stops, realizing he's finally reached the end of the line for his run. His Crocs dragged across the floor as he entered the room, kicking up clouds of ancient dust. Inside the dark clock tower, the ancient monster senses something moving around them in the shadows. Its glowing eyes flash as it tells Qin Xi that they are being welcomed by whatever is here. Qin Xi looks up, confused, as the dragon tells him to read the words on the wall out loud. He recites the incantation, calling for the flames of the abyss to purify his heart and banish evil. As he finishes the chant, debris and books begin to lift off the ground and swirl through the air. A massive vortex of blue energy erupts in the center of the room, leaving him wondering what's happening. The monster explains that the chant activated the shelter's barrier, completely cutting them off from the outside world. A blinding flash of light consumes the space as the magic takes hold. Suddenly, the dilapidated tower is replaced by a clean, furnished room, and Qin Xi can't believe his eyes. Glowing blue spirits with malicious eyes emerge from the dark corners of the new room. They pour out from behind a sliding door, charging straight toward him. More of the little ghosts rise from the floorboards, surrounding his feet. The spirits swarm him, their tiny blue forms clouding his vision. They latch onto his body in a massive pile, and he struggles to push them off. He gasps for air, feeling the weight of the spirits as they start to suffocate him. Qin Xi roars for them to get lost as he tries to shake them off. A pulse of energy clears the area around him, but he's still on high guard. A woman with long silver hair watches from the shadows, commenting that the spirits are just drooling over his body. He spins around, demanding to know who's there. She steps into the light with a cigarette in her hand, remarking on how rough life is for a symbiotic host. Before he could even react, she suddenly tripped and wiped out on the floor with a loud thud. The woman, Sister Qing, scrambled back to her feet, blaming her poor aerial control while still wincing from the fall. Thinking she's just another agent from the security bureau, Qin Xi decides this is his chance to strike back. He lunges at her with his claws out, ignoring the dragon's desperate attempt to tell him who she really is. Sister Qing's expression turns cold as she easily tracks his movement. She blocked his strike with a single hand, pinning his leg in midair and overwhelming him with a colossal wave of blue energy. He was completely frozen, unable to move a single muscle under the crushing weight of her sheer power. She gestures casually, lifting him into the air like a puppet on strings. She scolds him for being rude and rampaging inside her home. Qin Xi grunts in pain, unable to break free from the invisible grip. The dragon panics, shouting for him to apologize and address her as Sister Qing before things get worse. She stares him down, her eyes full of authority and a hint of amusement. With a flick of her hand, she drops him unceremoniously to the floor. He catches his breath, his throat still burning from the pressure she put on him. Standing over him, she asks if he really thought the outside world would be safer than this. He realizes she's talking directly to the monster inside him, and wonders if she's also a host. The ancient monster's head pops out to warn him that she's a Xuan arts master over 100 years old. Without waiting for an answer, she reached out and used her power to hoist him into the air once again. A shift in the air sends him stumbling as she demonstrates her mastery over the space. She smiles, looking him over and deciding that his human vessel would make a perfect servant. She offers him a spot under her roof, but only if he agrees to cook and wash her clothes. Qin Xi isn't thrilled about the idea, telling her to find someone else to be her maid. Sister Qing leans in close, her eyes cold as she asks Qin Xi if he really thinks he has a choice in the matter. The ancient monster whispers urgently to Qin Xi, begging him to say something nice since they have no leverage here. Defiant as ever, Qin Xi snaps back that despite her youthful looks, she can't hide the fact that she's a shameless old hag. Sister Qing looks down at him with a stony expression, while Qin Xi struggles and demands that she let him go. Qin Xi grabbed Sister Qing's arm in a desperate struggle to resist the power seizing his body. Their hands began to tremble violently as the two opposing forces clashed. The ancient monster can only stare in wide-eyed shock, completely speechless at how badly things are going. With a graceful but powerful motion, Sister Qing sweeps her hand, sending a wave of energy that knocks Qin Xi off his feet. He grunts in pain, his eyes narrowing as he realizes just how massive the gap in their power levels truly is. She stands calmly, while Qin Xi is sent tumbling backward with a startled scream. He was sent flying into the air, his body slammed hard against the ceiling. Fuming with rage, he screamed back at her, calling her an old witch, as his body was crushed even harder against the ceiling. Sister Qing slowly ascended, drifting closer until she was right in front of him. Sister Qing gazed at him, coldly stating that as a symbiotic host, he must fully understand his own circumstances. She adds that all host-related disturbances eventually find their way to her, and she won't go easy on him just because Ao is inside. She tells him to beg for mercy if he ever hopes to be forgiven for his blatant rudeness. Ao tries to mediate, suggesting they talk things out over a cup of tea, but the damage is already done. Qin Xi's anger flares, his eyes glowing as he thinks about how unbearable this kind of humiliation is. He screamed back that she was the unreasonable one, even as her power continued to pin him down, forcing his body into a state of total submission. The last words Sister Qing said to him were, "Go rot by yourself," as she turned her back and flicked him out of the window. A wide shot shows Qin Xi falling from the towering clock face, screaming as he nears the ground. He lands hard, right in the middle of a patrol of armored soldiers from the security bureau. He crashes directly onto the soldiers, sending them scattering and hitting the pavement with a heavy thud. Groaning in pain, he clutches his head, cursing his bad luck for running into another century-old lunatic. Ao manifests beside him, sounding disappointed as he tells Qin Xi that offending Sister Qing was a huge mistake. Qin Xi looks at his hand, remembering how her palm's strike nearly forced him and the symbiont apart. It suddenly dawned on him that regardless of her attitude, she had lived for over a century and knew every single host in this city inside out. He thinks that if anyone can help him return to being human, it's probably her. He leans against a pillar, while Ao mentions that Sister Qing is usually much kinder and gentler. Ao dismisses her temper as just a bad day, while Qin Xi asks for more information about her daily routine. With a determined look, Qin Xi declares that he's going to find a way to earn her trust. Qin Xi walks along the riverbank, realizing his wallet is missing. It must have fallen out during the fight. He checks his pockets, but he's only got a few coins left. He pulls out his phone, but it starts beeping with an error. A message pops up saying his identity has been restricted. He's been completely cut off from the system. Turning to Ao, he urged him to quickly memorize the vital numbers on the screen before the device died for good. In the distance, armored security units continue their patrol of the city outskirts. Qin Xi pulls up his hood, trying to keep a low profile. He knows the phone is just a tracking beacon now. Even though he's had it for years, it's too dangerous to keep. He says his goodbyes and tosses the device toward the river. The phone hits the water with a small splash. It sinks slowly into the dark depths of the river. Schools of fish scatter as the device descends toward the bottom. The phone settles on the riverbed, its screen still glowing with Heisha's contact info. A strange, pale creature with a mustache-like growth peers down at the light. The webbed hand of a monstrous heteromorph reaches out to grab it. The creature clutches the phone and swims off into the murky water. Across the city, customers leave a brightly lit maid cafe called First Love. Inside, Heisha puts on a cute act, winking at her master. She performs a silly magic spell over a customer's drink while he watches, completely enamored. But the moment she turns away, the bubbly act fades into pure exhaustion. An old man named Boss Kyan laughs and invites her to come sit next to him. Heisha forces a smile. Internally, she's counting the days, 80 days of dealing with creeps to pay off her tuition debt. The old man reaches out and grabs her, demanding some happy water. He makes a disgusting face, leaning in way too close. Heisha's temper is reaching its limit. She can't take it anymore and slams the drink down, splashing it right in his face. The cafe erupts into chaos as the other maids look on in shock. The security guard went ballistic, screaming about her attitude, while another maid frantically apologized as she scrambled to clean up the mess. Heisha storms out the back door into the alley, done with the nonsense. Suddenly, her phone starts ringing loudly. Her manager comes out yelling, demanding to know what she thinks she's doing. He warns her that they can't afford to offend a regular like Boss Kyan. He threatens to ship her off to the unplanned zones for the hardest, dirtiest work if she screws up again. Heisha looks at her phone and realizes Boss Kyan is actually a juicy mark. Her eyes glow with a predatory light. She turns back toward the door, a dark aura swirling around her. She returns to the table with a sweet apology, offering Boss Kyan a special pink drink to cool off. The old man doesn't waste any time, sliding his hand onto her thigh. Heisha blows a cloud of purple smoke directly into his face. The scent is enchanting, leaving the man dazed and drooling. She leans in close, telling him to meet her after her shift. He's completely hooked. Outside, the neon heart of the club glows over the city street. Heisha reveals her true face. Boss Kyan thinks she's light, but he's in for a surprise. She drops the facade, telling the old man she's definitely not who he thinks. Boss Kyan screams in terror as he sees what's really standing in front of him. A single strike sends him reeling into the shadows. He collapses onto the floor, completely knocked out. Heisha stands over her prey, her monstrous spirit looming large behind her. She rifles through his wallet and scoffs. "That's all you got." She checks his ID and realizes Boss Kyan was just a low-level guy from the Security Bureau's intelligence division. She looks disappointed, having hoped for a much bigger payday. Back in a dark room, a phone vibrates incessantly on a bedside table. Heisha picks it up and starts scrolling through her notifications. She finds a bounty list sent by Captain Bufeng. Qin Xi is right at the top, worth 120,000 red coins. She recognizes the face immediately. He was in the class next to hers back in college. Meanwhile, Qin Xi wanders the rainy city streets, fumbling with a payphone receiver. He tells Ao that everyone he's called has refused to help him. He's down to his very last few coins and has nowhere left to go. Ao floats nearby, teasing him and asking who is actually left to call. Qin Xi lets out a tired sigh, feeling the weight of his situation. He stares at the phone for a long moment, hesitating. Finally, he makes a decision and breathes out a puff of cold air. He drops the coin into the slot and starts dialing another number from memory. He racks his brain, hoping there's someone left who might actually remember him. Across the city in an employee dormitory, a phone rings on the counter while someone washes dishes. Heisha picks up the phone, wondering who could be calling from an unknown number. She answers the call, her voice cautious but curious. Qin Xi introduces himself, hoping she hasn't forgotten him after all this time. Heisha is shocked to hear his voice, especially after seeing the bounty. She immediately switches to a friendly tone, reminding him they were in the same club back in college. She remembers teasing him about his height back when they were students together. Qin Xi explains that he dropped his phone in the river which is why he's calling from a new line. Internally, Heisha is thrilled. Her little fishing plan is moving along perfectly. She brings up the club again, reminding him how she pulled him into it back then. Ao lets out a furious shout right in Qinzai's ear, but he's too busy talking to notice. Qinzai tells her he has to keep the call short, since his time on the payphone is limited. He admits things have gotten really dangerous for him, and that he desperately needs her help. Heisha's eyes glow with a predatory light. She knows this is her big chance. She agrees to help without hesitation, playing the part of the loyal classmate. Qinzai gets straight to the point and asks if he can borrow some cash. Heisha is already thinking about how to use every resource to gain trust and execute her next move. She tells him she needs to handle some of her own business first before they can meet. She looks out at the city skyline, planning to contact Bu Feng for an advance on the bounty. She stands on the balcony, determined to repay her debts and leave her old life behind forever. On her balcony, Heisha tells Qinzai she's also working in Chihuang City and shouts, "Go Heisha," to herself. She tells him she has some spare cash and can lend it to him for now, but she's still planning something. Overjoyed, Qinzai promised to pay her back double, though Heisha wondered how on earth a wanted man could even get his hands on that kind of money. Qinzai tells her he won't drag her into his mess. She just needs to leave the cash somewhere safe for him to pick up. They agree on a meeting spot, Warehouse 4 at Bayongport, District 9, tomorrow morning around 7:00. Heisha notes it's a safe place because it's deserted. As she speaks, the phone begins to beep repeatedly, signaling the end of the call. Qinzai realizes his time on the payphone has run out as the call disconnects. Heisha sits on the railing, telling the dial tone to stay safe and not get caught by the security bureau. She thinks to herself that they each have their own goals. The scene shifts to a dark, narrow corridor as Qinzai walks away. Ao asks him why he doesn't just ask his parents for help. Qinzai looks down, his face shrouded in shadow. He thinks about how he's been alone ever since he was young. He remembers never feeling secure and always trying to be independent. A memory flashes back to his parents yelling at him while he stood there, small and wounded. He says they always criticized or shut him down. He admits that he never confided in them, even when he was hurt, and that asking for help now only fills him with guilt. With tears in his eyes, he says he simply doesn't want to trouble them anymore. The next morning, the sun shines over a bridge. Qinzai wakes up with a wide yawn, looking tired from the night before. He looks around, thinking that sleeping under a bridge with a group of strangers is something he's still not used to. He suddenly feels a tug and looks up. "Huh!" he exclaims as he realizes he's being lifted. He finds himself tied up and hanging from a rope. The men he was sleeping near laugh, telling him they tied him up while he was asleep to earn some cash. Qinzai glares at them, calling them disgusting. The leader tells him not to blame them because they're just trying to survive, and adds that the security bureau should be there any minute. Qinzai's eyes glow with a fierce yellow light. "You think this is enough to keep me down?" he growls. With a sudden burst of power, the ropes binding him snap and fly apart. The men are caught in a blinding flash of yellow light. "What the?" one of them cries out. Qinzai drops to the ground, surrounded by a swirling aura of energy. Ao lets out a yee-haw, saying he's feeling fired up for the day after his morning stretches. The men draw their makeshift weapons, shouting to each other not to let him get away. One man charges forward with a wooden club, screaming as he swings it at the transformed Qinzai. Qinzai didn't even bother to dodge, letting the wooden club smash directly against his head. The wooden weapon shatters against his demonic skin as he glares at his attacker. The man looks on in pure shock, unable to believe his weapon broke so easily. "What?" he gasps. Qinzai unleashes a wave of purple energy that sends the men flying in every direction. A large, muscular man steps forward, swinging a heavy concrete block on a pole. "Out of the way, let me handle this," he bellows. Qinzai crouches low, his monster form glowing with power as he prepares to counter. The big man swings his massive weapon, but Qinzai's purple energy slashes through the air, parrying the blow. With a single strike, Qinzai shatters the concrete block and sends the large man reeling. He tumbled backward after Qinzai shredded his clothes to pieces, leaving him buck naked. "Oh, mama!" he shrieked in terror. Qinzai towers over the leader, demanding to know how to get to Bayongport. The man cringes in fear, begging for his life. Terrified, the man points the way, telling him to cross the bridge and head south toward Miracle Park. Qinzai stands satisfied, while the man admits he scared himself silly. Qinzai leaps away from the bridge, leaving the group of men in the dust. One of them shouts after him as he disappears into the distance. People along the riverbank point and shout as they catch a glimpse of the dark, monstrous figure of Qin, Zai racing past them at incredible speed. Deep underwater, a mutated creature with goggles picks up the phone Qin Xi ditched. His trail is officially cold. On the surface, everything looks normal. Just another manhole cover in a quiet alleyway. Down in the tunnels, Ao suggests staying put. Moving through the sewers is the only way to avoid the trouble waiting above. A mechanical hum fills the tunnel as a bright light sweeps across the walls. Someone is looking for them. A security bureau drone hovers just outside their hiding spot, its red sensors scanning every corner. Ao confirms his suspicions. The bureau is ramping up their search, and they're using high-tech drones to do it. The drone continues its patrol. It's clear that not even the sewers are safe for long. Qin Xi climbs out of a manhole. Ao tells him to switch back to human form. It's safer and saves energy. He wonders if there's a catch to this power. There's always some kind of limitation. Ao explains how their bond works. As long as they're together, they sustain each other. One meal can last them for a week. It makes sense. Qin Xi realizes that's why he hasn't felt a single hunger pang since yesterday. Out in the city, invisible lower-level spirits drift through the crowd like ghosts. Most people don't even know they're there. These spirits are desperate. They'll do anything to find a human host and stay alive. It's a brutal world. If they can't find a host, they just end up as food for the stronger spirits. Looking at the busy streets, Qin Xi sighs. Spirits or humans, everyone is just struggling at the bottom of the food chain. Ao jokes that for a spirit, finding a host is like finding a soulmate. A match made in, well, somewhere. But those romances usually end in disaster, leaving the human broken and the monster in charge. The idea of partnering with a monster disgusts him. He still just wants to be a regular human again. He remembers the things he saw online before all this. Stories of people being saved or betrayed. The forums were full of warnings about the security bureau's brutal treatment of heteromorphs. He spent hours scrolling through those hidden communities, trying to understand what he was getting into. One video showed a guy describing a machine that scanned him with a light, so bright it felt like it was tearing him apart. The guy was a mess, claiming his body was falling apart after they forced his spirit out. He wanted an explanation. The comments were chaos. Some people felt bad for him, while others just wanted all heteromorphs out of their city. Seeing the public's hate made Qin Xi hesitate. Was coming to this city really a good idea? He leaned back, exhaling. The weight of his new reality was starting to sink in. Chihuang City was a lawless enclave, a place abandoned by the state and the people long ago. But the pay was twice as high as anywhere else. He made his choice. It was settled. The man in the video had one last warning. Stop dreaming of being human and just try to survive. Back in the present, he arrives at Miracle Park. He needs to find that package before heading to Beiyang Port. The place is a desert. Strange, floating rocks hang in the air like something out of a nightmare. It's been abandoned for years. He looks for a high spot to get a better view of the area. Massive boulders drift silently above the ruins, defying every law of physics. He spots a giant, crumbling statue and notices some old text carved into the base. He brushes off the dust to reveal an ancient plaque. It's almost unreadable. It's the statue of the Mother Goddess. It dates back thousands of years. Ao tells him that humans destroyed these ruins while digging for ancient relics. Their greed is what toppled the goddess, and that search for power is exactly what triggered the disaster that ruined the world. Qin Xi looks up. The Rift Event, the name itself carries a heavy weight. He sees flashes of a crack in space, a tear that opened up a gateway to another world. A terrifying monster peers through the rift, marking the moment everything changed for humanity. Suddenly, his head feels like it's going to explode. Ao's memories are flooding in, and they're more than he can handle. Qin Xi lets out a guttural scream as Ao's memories force their way into his mind. A flood of ancient history hitting him all at once. I'm finally starting to remember everything, Ao's voice echoes, his long-lost past finally resurfacing through their shared bond. He shows Qin Xi a vision of the Mountain Sea realm, a vibrant world where floating islands and ancient power were everywhere. It was a world of constant warfare, a savage land where only the strongest beasts survived the endless struggles for dominance. Ao recalls a time long before he came to Earth, back when he was one of the realm's top fighters in a cycle of never-ending violence. Qin Xi watches the chaos unfold in the vision, struggling to process the sheer scale of the world he's being forced to see. The beasts of that realm were always at each other's throats, fighting over territory and the divine resources they guarded. Qin Xi finds himself pulled directly into the memory, standing in the middle of a barren, dusty wasteland as his own form shifts. Suddenly, a pale creature with jagged fangs lunged at him, its eyes glowing with a primal energy so fierce it felt terrifyingly real. Ao identifies the attacker as Sky Wolf, a relentless fighter and his greatest rival back in their homeland. What? Qin Xi gasps as Ao urges him to fight back and reclaim the land that was stolen from them. The memory shifts to a frantic, clawing struggle, both beasts using every ounce of strength and claw to overcome the other. They were the champions of their respective clans, locked in a battle so powerful it shook the foundations of the realm. But in the middle of their fight, the sky itself began to crack open, crackling with a terrifying, unknown energy. Massive rifts appeared without warning, tearing through the fabric of their reality and signaling the end of their world. A powerful vacuum began to suck everything in, dragging beasts, rocks, and trees into the dark, swirling void. Not even the strongest creatures could resist the pull. They were dragged away from everything they knew, helpless against the void. They were spat out into the human world, where they mutated into the ferocious, giant monsters humans came to fear as ancient beasts. A boar-like beast goring a helpless human shows how quickly their arrival turned into a bloody slaughter for the people of this world. In the vision, Qin Xi is dressed as a mining worker. He's confused as his fellow miners scream at him to run for his life. He stands frozen in the middle of the cave, watching as the people he's with are hunted down one by the newly arrived monsters. A massive beast head looms over him, its jaws wide enough to swallow a man whole, eyes glowing with primal hunger. He barely has time to react before the scene is covered in blood and chaos, the power of the beasts completely overwhelming the humans. The arrival of the beasts led to a massive conflict with humanity, leaving villages burning and cities in ruins as they attacked everything in sight. A robed man stands among the wreckage, mourning their failure to protect the divine resources the beasts were meant to guard. Then, humans found a way to seal those rifts, leaving the monsters behind to wander a planet they never intended to call home. The rifts eventually sealed shut, trapping the surviving beasts on a world that rejected them and their ancient forms. The Earth settled, but the war had already changed the course of history forever, leaving the beasts with nowhere to go. A body lies motionless among the rubble, a cold reminder of the lives lost in the crossfire between two different worlds. Qin Xi stares at the lifeless worker he was portraying in the vision, feeling the weight of a death that isn't even his own. A spectral blue light begins to rise from the corpse as the physical shell finally gives up on this world's atmosphere. Ao explains that their beast forms couldn't survive here, forcing them to transition into the parasitic spirit forms they inhabit today. They didn't truly die. They simply evolved to endure in a world that rejected them, waiting for the right host. Ao's spirit towers over a younger version of Qin Xi, a ghost of the immense power he once held in the Mountain Sea realm. Back in reality, Qin Xi lets out a final, agonizing yell as the memory transfer reaches its conclusion. His eyes snap open, glowing with a fierce blue energy that matches the ancient power he just witnessed. A blinding flash of white light consumes everything, marking the end of the intense psychic connection. He finds himself back among the stone ruins of Miracle Park, the ancient vision finally starting to fade away. He drops to the ground, gasping for air as his mind finally returns to his own body and the present day. Ao tells him that after the rifts closed, he and other spirits were locked in a dark space for an eternity before finally escaping. He tried to possess several humans after his escape, but their bodies always rejected him, unable to handle his energy. Everything changed when he met a young sister, Qing. She gave him a simple choice: fend for himself and die or come with them. Qin Xi asks why the security department is so focused on them, and Ao reveals a grim truth. They aren't just after him, but every host spirit currently inhabiting this world. Ao explains that a high-level mission called the Cocoon Breaking Plan was issued by King Xi, a mysterious and powerful figure whose silhouette looms over a legion of soldiers and beasts. King Xi is the supreme ruler of Crimson Emperor City, commanding his forces from the apex of the massive Crimson Emperor Tower. As they trekked through the wilderness, Qin Xi sensed an ancient energy beneath his feet, a hidden gateway that could lead back to the rift and the realm they had left behind. The dragon spirit is stunned to find another passage to the Mountain Sea realm, a secret that Sister Qing apparently kept from him for a very long time. Suspicion began to cloud their minds as Qin Xi wondered why Cheng Lai Qing would hide such critical information. He realized he needed to find her for answers, but first, he had to face the path ahead. Reaching the edge of a jagged cliff, Qin Xi looks down at Bayong Port, the destination where his next journey begins. With Ao by his side, he prepares to descend. Qin Xi is backed into a corner, his mind racing under the crushing weight of the impossible choice before him. Bu Feng holds up an injector with a cold smile, trying to convince him that the security bureau is his only hope for survival. In a hazy vision, the voices of countless souls echoed through his head, begging him to surrender the entity while spectral hands reached out from the void to ensnare Ao. The internal pressure becomes physical as black energy surges around Qin Xi, his body reacting violently to the awakening. A sudden shout breaks the tension, drawing Bu Feng's attention to a small figure crouching in the dark. Heisha charges forward, screaming for Qin Xi to snap out of it before the soldiers close in. A blinding flash of light erupted as a voice from the depths of his subconscious rang out, urging him to resist the transformation and cling to his humanity. Deep within his subconscious, Qin Xi reached out toward the besieged Ao, and their two wills finally began to intertwine as one. Bu Feng closed in with the needle, but the final image in his subconscious was Ao, having finally broken free from the swarm of spirits. Energy crackles through the air as Qin Xi's body begins to glow with a fierce, unstable power. The sheer force of the shockwave sends Bu Feng stumbling back, shielded only by her own instinct. As the smoke cleared, it revealed Qin Xi in a sleek, dark armored suit, looking incredibly badass and ready to take on the security androids. Bu Feng stood frozen in disbelief. Her perfect plan went up in smoke as the target abruptly broke free from her control. Amidst the chaos, a surviving android grabs Heisha, keeping her pinned as a hostage to buy some time. Behind a mask of bioarmor, Qin Xi's eyes glow with a new resolve. He isn't handing Ao over to anyone. Bu Feng's composure finally cracks, her face twisting in shock at the raw power radiating from the boy. This is resonance, a second stage of evolution triggered when host and parasite finally share a single, perfect belief. Qin Xi clenches his fist, feeling a level of strength and unity with Ao that he never thought was possible. It's not just about the armor anymore. He can now manipulate energy and harness this power directly through his own body. Bu Feng realizes the scale of what she's dealing with, cursing the fact that her prize has evolved right under her nose. Heisha tearfully apologizes for selling him out just to buy her own freedom, but Bu Feng just sees her as a useful little tool. Bu Feng mocks their bond, but Heisha snaps back, refusing to let the woman who tricked her get the last word. Trapped by the machines, Heisha realizes her usual seduction tricks aren't going to work on these soulless mechanical bodies. Qin Xi takes a moment to steady himself, still trying to figure out the full extent of what his new body can actually do. Bu Feng loses her patience and orders her units to open fire and bring him down at any cost. Qin Xi leaps into action, his movements a complete blur as the androids unleash a barrage of energy blasts. The warehouse fills with mechanical fire, but the armored youth is already elsewhere. He moves with blinding speed, weaving through the crossfire like it's standing still. Heisha warned him about the lethal electromagnetic cannons, but Bu Feng's troops couldn't even get a lock on him. Fed up with Heisha's constant interference, Bu Feng ordered the security androids to gag her and shut her up once and for all. Heisha can only watch, gagged and helpless, as the warehouse turns into a literal war zone. Qin Xi vaulted over the heavy machinery, his target clearly in sight. He drops down with a precise strike, crushing the head of an android into the concrete floor. A massive burst of blue energy illuminates the room. The resonance form pulses with light as Qin Xi readies himself for the next wave. The android froze in its tracks, its systems haywire upon realizing its energy blasts had absolutely no effect on Qin Xi's body. Qin Xi positions himself like an iron wall, his armor plates shimmering under the heat of the battle. Bu Feng screams for her units to unleash their maximum firepower. A concentrated volley of energy slams into the floor, creating a massive explosion of light and debris. The entire building shakes from the impact, energy leaking through the fresh cracks in the walls. High above the chaos, a new player enters the fray, standing on the roof with a massive anchor slung over his shoulder. The outsider hunter peers through the wreckage with a twisted grin, laughing at the carnage unfolding below. The mustached outsider hunter checks his gear, smirking as he sends the coordinates to his boss, eager to join the fray. In District 9, a cold-faced official takes the call, ordering his men to retrieve the host spirit and kill anyone who stands in their way. He crushes a crystal in his hand, his eyes burning with irritation as he decides to deal with the troublemakers personally. A sudden explosion sends massive chunks of concrete flying through the air. Bu Feng and her robotic guards are caught off guard by the sudden violence, their surroundings obscured by rising smoke. Heisha watches in silence, her eyes wide with terror as the situation spirals out of control. Standing tall in his dark purple armor, Qin Xi feels the raw power of resonance coursing through him as he adapts to his new form. He flexes his claws, his glowing eyes fixed on the remaining threats as he declares that the real fight starts now. With a burst of speed, the armored youth lunges at the nearest security unit. He delivers a crushing blow, his fist crackling with energy as it connects with the android's chassis. Qin Xi flips through the air, taking down another machine while the surviving guards scramble to organize a coordinated attack. His gaze remains cold and focused, his purple eyes piercing through the chaos of the warehouse. Heisha struggles against her restraints, muffled cries for help escaping from behind her gag as the androids tighten their grip. Qin Xi stays low, racing across the floor with single-minded determination to reach his friend. He becomes a whirlwind of strikes, clashing with multiple machines in a flurry of sparks and metal. The armored hero grits his teeth, pushing his enhanced body to its absolute limit. A heavy chain snaps around his torso, an android trying to pin him down through sheer mechanical force. He doesn't even flinch, his armored fingers clamping down on the cold steel of the chain. Despite the guard's demands for his surrender, Qin Xi pulls back on the chain, dragging the heavy robots toward him. He stands his ground in the center of the warehouse, bracing for the next wave of the Bureau's forces. With a powerful yank, he swings the chain, smashing the security units against each other like toys. An explosion rocks the floor as more units arrive, the shockwave nearly knocking over the android holding the hostage. Qin Xi dodges a volley of energy fire, his movements fluid and precise in the heat of battle. A cannon blast tears through the smoke, narrowly missing the armored youth as he continues his assault. A blinding beam of pure energy illuminates the entire room. Bu Feng leaps into the thick of it, her speed rivaling that of the armored outsider as she closes the distance. She snarls at him, her eyes flashing with anger as she warns him not to get too arrogant. Her kick landed with devastating force, slamming toward Qin Xi, but he managed to raise both arms just in time to take a defensive stance. The shockwave from the kick erupted in a massive flash of light, proving that the security captain was more than just a desk-bound official. Heisha flinches at the impact, her heart sinking as she sees her protector being pushed back. Qin Xi skids across the floor, impressed by the raw power behind the woman's physical attacks. Bu Feng smirks, taunting him with her title as he realizes he's been underestimating her true strength. He tells her to step aside to avoid further injury, but she remains unmoved, claiming that violence won't get him what he wants. She gestures toward the hostage, warning him that his reckless actions are only putting those around him in more danger. While Qin Xi questions her logic, Heisha senses something is wrong. This isn't just a lecture, it's a stalling tactic. In the background, the damaged androids begin to stir once more. One unit clutches its head as its systems reboot, returning to active combat mode. Qin Xi notices the movement, his eyes widening as he realizes these machines aren't staying down. More androids surround him, but he refuses to leave Heisha behind, even if she did set him up. He gives Bu Feng one final warning to quit while she's ahead, because he's done playing games. The captain just scoffs, suggesting the parasite has already messed with his head and that she's actually the one helping him. She looks out at the distant city skyline, comparing him to a bird in a cage with nowhere left to run. Bu Feng reveals that capturing him was always her objective, a confession that leaves Qin Xi stunned. She explains that his unique value is the key to her promotion, ensuring her position as the commander of District 11. With his power under her control, she envisions herself rising to the top and eventually bringing him into her own elite organization. She urges him to embrace his new life as an outsider, arguing that his former human identity has become a meaningless relic of the past. With a calculated smile, the captain asks the armored youth if he's willing to join her cause. Qin Xi remains silent, his expression unreadable behind his transformation as he processes her manipulative offer. From her bound position, Heisha's eyes burn with anger, silently warning Qin Xi that Bu Feng only cares about the powerful parasite spirit. She recalls the suffering of the slum dwellers, people who were once lured into ruin by the same kind of deceptive, hollow promises. Qin Xi finally speaks, the single word dripping with skepticism as he questions the idea of cooperation. Bu Feng grows impatient, her sharp eyes demanding an immediate answer to her proposal. Rejecting her offer outright, Qin Xi makes it clear that he has no interest in serving a group of self-serving hypocrites. The captain's smile vanishes, her face tightening with frustration at the unexpected refusal. Seeing that words have failed, Bu Feng coldly commands her subordinates to take the boy by force. The security units ready their weapons, but the air suddenly fills with the sound of metal tearing and concrete shattering. The roof caves in as a massive, chain-bound figure drops from above, interrupting the capture and shocking the captain. The outsider hunter warns the security team to back off, declaring the boy his personal target. His landing is violent, sending a shockwave through the warehouse floor that knocks back the surrounding androids. Qin Xi braces himself, realizing that this newcomer is far more dangerous than the security guards he's been fighting. The massive hunter heaves a heavy iron anchor, the thick chains rattling as he prepares to strike. Energy surges as Qin Xi barely manages to block a devastating initial blow from the colossal weapon. The hunter is surprisingly agile, leaping through the air with a manic grin as he continues his relentless assault. Terrified by the escalating violence, Heisha tries to call out to Qin Xi, her muffled voice lost in the din of combat. Bu Feng stands frozen for a moment, her carefully laid plans thrown into total chaos by this uninvited intruder. One of the guards attempts a sneak attack with a mace, but the impact against the hunter's head barely seems to register. The massive anchor is thrown again, slicing through the air with terrifying speed and power. It smashes through a security robot with ease, forcing the captain to dive out of the way of the debris. The mustached man introduces himself to Bu Feng, casually informing her that the black-haired youth is his prey. Qin Xi watches the exchange warily, sensing a murderous intent from the man that dwarfs anything he's felt before. He's forced onto the defensive immediately as the anchor comes swinging back, clashing against his armored forearms. The ground exploded where the weapon landed, a testament to the raw, crushing strength of that single strike. The villain laughs at Qin Xi's efforts, mocking his claws and questioning if that's the best the host can do. A powerful follow-up strike catches Qin Xi off guard, the impact drawing a pained grunt from the armored youth. The hunter doesn't give him a second to breathe, swinging his anchor in a wide, punishing arc that tears up the floor. He reveals that he's been tracking Qin Xi across the entire district, putting in considerable effort to keep him in his sights. With a sudden, explosive movement, he drives his weapon forward again, relentless in his pursuit. Struggling against the overwhelming force, Qin Xi demanded the identity of his new assailant while delivering a sharp kick toward the District 9 lackey. The hunter effortlessly parried his kick with the massive anchor, yet the lingering force of the strike sent him skidding backward. He identifies himself as a specialized agent sent by Lord Zhang Chun to deal with rogue outsiders like him. He admits that while the spirit inside Qin Xi is incredibly valuable, his orders are to kill the boy before claiming the prize. Licking his lips with a long, unsettling tongue, the hunter suggests he might even consume the spirit for himself. The realization hits Qin Xi. This man is a high-level predator from the legendary Hunter Guild. As the battle reaches a fever pitch, Bu Feng's subordinates look to her for orders, unsure how to handle the murderous newcomer. As the hunter stood face-to-face with Qin Xi, Ao spoke up, revealing that he is a member of a lethal assassin group hiding within Red Emperor City, surviving as mercenaries who hunt for the highest bounties. Their reputation as cold-blooded killing machines precedes them, earning them the feared title of outsider hunters across the globe. Watching the chaos, Bu Feng clenches her fist, knowing she cannot let this opportunity to become the commander of District 11 slip through her fingers. She reflects on her heritage as the daughter of the Rakshasa family, a clan that once wielded immense power and wealth in this very district. A dark memory of a burning estate and her slaughtered kin flashes through her mind, the price of her father's defiance against their shadowy organization. Determined to restore her family's legacy, she vows that she is the only one worthy of the commander's seat. In the distance, the battle between the two powerhouses continues to send shockwaves through the industrial warehouse. Bu Feng notes that as long as they hold Heisha hostage, the boy has nowhere to truly run. She orders her men to stay back, deciding to let the hunter and Qin Xi exhaust each other before she makes her final move. The hunter lets out a manic laugh, swinging his massive anchor with terrifying velocity and precision. Qin Xi is forced into a desperate defensive stance, his armored form a blur as he tries to parry the heavy iron blows. A rapid succession of strikes rains down, the heavy chains clattering as the hunter continues his relentless assault. A direct hit sends Qin Xi skidding back, a grunt of pain escaping him as his defenses begin to buckle. With a predatory grin, the hunter prepares for a crushing blow, aiming to end the struggle right then and there. The force of the attack knocks Qin Xi upward, his body smashing into the tiled roof of the warehouse. Sensing blood in the water, the hunter leaps after him, his massive frame breaking through the structural support as he pursues his prey. Qin Xi maneuvers quickly across the high roof, his movements agile as he tries to reposition himself in the open air. The hunter lands heavily on the peak, taunting the boy for retreating before the real fun had even begun. He dares Qin Xi to hide, confident that no corner of the city can keep him safe from a professional hunter. Behind his mask, Qin Xi's eyes burn with a cold, calculated intensity, his focus shifting away from the direct confrontation. The hunter scoffs at the boy's apparent cowardice, mocking him as he chases him across the precarious rooftop tiles. Below, Bu Feng watches the roof warily, warning her subordinates that Qin Xi is far too cunning to simply flee. She suddenly notices a dark silhouette perched atop a container directly behind their formation. Realizing too late that the rooftop chase was a diversion, Bu Feng shouts a warning as Qin Xi prepares to rescue Heisha from her captors. But Qin Xi isn't running out of fear. His eyes burn with a cold, focused fury as he prepares his next move. The hunter leaps across the rooftops, mocking the kid's attempts to escape his reach. Bu Feng isn't about to let her prize slip away either, barking orders at her men to keep their eyes peeled. Haley looks on in terror, caught in the middle of a war she never asked for. Above them, Qin Xi perches on a container like a predator, his silhouette dark against the sky. Bufeng quotes, instincts scream at her to warn her squad before it's too late. In a blur of purple light, the boy drops from the heights, moving faster than the guards can track. He tears through the mechanical defenses with a single swipe of his bioorganic claws. Before Haley can even process what's happening, Qin Xi is there, pulling her into his arms. But the hunter is right on their heels, slamming into the ground with enough force to crack the foundation. The giant looms over them, blocking their path out of the warehouse. Energy crackles through the air as Qin Xi shields the girl from the incoming barrage. Realizing her men are just getting in the way, Bu Feng calls for a ceasefire. The hunter isn't interested in a fair fight. He just wants to crush anyone standing in his way. He lands heavily, the impact sending out another ripple of force through the docks. With a roar, he swings the massive anchor in a wide arc, daring anyone to step closer. Metal scraps and debris clatter across the floor as the weight of the attack shatters everything in its path. Bu Feng realizes her high-tech drones are useless against these two. If she wants the win, she has to do it herself. She leaps into the fray, brandishing her collapsible batons as she charges the aberrant hunter. The hunter's eyes narrow behind his goggles, finally acknowledging a threat worth his time. The air hums as Bu Feng unleashes a flurry of strikes, her movements a blur of practiced precision. Sparks fly as her batons clash against the hunter's heavy chain, the sound of metal on metal echoing through the warehouse. She sees her own determined reflection in the monster's lenses, knowing one mistake could be her last. They trade blows at blinding speed, Bu Feng using her agility to counter the giant's raw power. She catches him with a heavy thwack, forcing a grunt of pain from the mountain of a man. But the hunter is relentless, swinging his anchor back to keep her at bay. A heavy thud echoes as she blocks a strike that would have leveled a building. Gritting her teeth, she lunges forward for one final, desperate opening. Her foot connects with his face in a bone-shattering kick, sending him reeling back. The hunter stumbles, his anchor dragging through the concrete as he tries to regain his footing. Bu Feng doesn't stop, pushing her body to the limit as she closes the distance again. She blocks an overhead swing, the force of the impact making her bones ache. The hunter just laughs, enjoying the thrill of a captain actually having some fight in her. Her hands are shaking from the effort, her grip on the batons slipping as her stamina flags. He looks down at her with a mix of respect and boredom, reminding her she isn't the one he's after. Realizing he's about to slip away, she screams for her team to get back on the chase. Meanwhile, Qin Xi ducks into the shadows with Haley, his heart heavy with the guilt of dragging her into this mess. He hands her a spiked bat, telling her to take it just in case things get even messier. He stops for a second, realizing that for someone in her position, a simple bat might not be enough, or maybe she doesn't need it at all. Qin Xi urges Haley to keep moving, pointing out an exit just ahead. Their footsteps echo as they race through the warehouse, trying to put distance between them and the chaos. Suddenly, Qin Xi stops, his senses spiking as a targeting reticle seems to lock onto his mind. He shouts a warning to Haley, sensing a deadly presence closing in on them from the shadows. The outsider hunter drops from above with a wicked laugh, swinging his chain with lethal intent. Qin Xi counters the strike, his bioarmor pulsing as he realizes his cognitive resonance with the spirit is deepening. The impact is blinding, a surge of power radiating from Qin Xi's core as he fights to perceive the flow of the battle. He grits his teeth, focusing every ounce of his will to unlock the true potential of the power residing within him. A massive explosion rocks the warehouse, sending debris flying and forcing the combatants apart. Haley watches from the sidelines, her eyes wide with shock at the sheer scale of the power on display. Behind her, the steady click of heels signals a new threat approaching through the smoke. Bu Feng steps into the light, her expression cold as she considers using the girl as leverage to secure Qin Xi's spirit. Haley's breath catches in her throat as the commander's shadow looms over her. Bu Feng dismisses her as a mere weakling, ordering her men to seize the girl immediately. But Haley isn't going down without a fight. A spark of yellow light flickers in her eyes as she gathers her courage. Electricity begins to arc around her feet, crackling against the floor with increasing intensity. Bu Feng's eyes widen in surprise as the air begins to vibrate with a strange, humming energy. To her amazement, Haley's form begins to blur and split into multiple shimmering afterimages. The commander realizes this isn't some common sorcery. There's something far more rare and dangerous at work here. Despite her burgeoning power, the guards manage to pin Haley down, though she struggles desperately against their grip. A voice echoes in Haley's mind, urging her to focus on the feeling of her previous transformation. Bu Feng smirks, realizing she might have just stumbled upon another valuable aberrant to add to her collection. Haley shuts her eyes tight, a memory of a past trauma flickering across her consciousness. Bu Feng gloats about how this second host spirit will secure her position as the commander of District 11. She's so caught up in her own ambition that she almost misses the shift in the air around the girl. With a sudden burst of speed, Haley swings her spiked bat, catching a guard off guard. Bolts of lightning erupt from her body, shocking the men holding her as her clones provide the perfect distraction. She stares down the commander, her voice steady as she declares that Bu Feng's mission is over. Meanwhile, Bu Feng draws her own weapons, refusing to let a couple of kids ruin her carefully laid plans. Qin Xi swoops back into the fray, his movements a blur of bioorganic fury as he protects Haley. He slams into a guard with the force of a wrecking ball, the impact echoing through the vast warehouse. Debris and cargo containers are tossed around like toys in the wake of the building's destruction. The hunter tries to track his movements, but Qin Xi's enhanced senses allow him to stay one step ahead. A massive shipping container is sent tumbling, nearly crushing several of the security division's mechs. Qin Xi's mind is a storm of tactical data, predicting every strike before his enemies can even make them. He weaves through the chaos, a predator in his natural element as he narrows his sights on the hunter. He lands a devastating punch that sends shockwaves through the air, his armor glowing a fierce purple. Clenching his fist, he prepares to end this fight once and for all, the power of the core fully unleashed. A series of rapid-fire blows hammers into the hunter, each one more powerful than the last. The giant is sent flying back, his goggles cracking and his strength failing as he lets out a cry of agony. Qin Xi roars with exertion, his bioarmor shifting and expanding as he channels a massive amount of energy. With a final, explosive sweep of his arm, he sends a wave of dark energy tearing through the battlefield. The outsider hunter crashes into a shipping container with a heavy thud, a cloud of dust and debris rising around him. Qin Xi stands triumphantly, his bioarmor glowing with purple veins as he taunts his opponent, nodding that claws aren't his only strength. Slumped against the container, the battered hunter chuckles, impressed by the rookie's power and the strength of an aberrant's cognitive resonance. His expression turns sinister as he declares that despite his own defeat, none of them will leave the warehouse alive. Qin Xi stares down at him, his brow furrowed in confusion as he tries to understand the man's final threat. Cracks of yellow electricity begin to dance across the hunter's body as his laughter grows more frantic. He invokes the hunter's final rule. When the hunter's life is at its end, the prey must be dragged down with him. A short distance away, Bu Feng is locked in a frantic struggle with several of Haley's clones, her batons moving in a blur of motion. Sensing a sudden spike in energy, Qin Xi looks up, a targeting reticle appearing in his purple glowing eyes as he detects the danger. The hunter is engulfed in a massive surge of electrical energy, his eyes glowing white as he prepares for a final, suicidal attack. "Stop, this place is going to explode!" Qin Xi roars, his voice filled with desperation as he looks toward the others. He can only watch as the hunter's power reaches a critical mass, the air around him crackling with violent energy. Haley looks up in shock as Qin Xi leaps toward her, his silhouette illuminated by the burgeoning blast. A massive explosion tears through the warehouse, a pillar of fire and smoke erupting into the sky as the entire structure is consumed. The shockwave sends shipping containers tumbling into the harbor, the water churning from the sheer force of the detonation. Observing from a distance, a security division officer, a tall, pale man with gray hair and a high-tech visor, coolly surveys the destruction. He smugly declares that Captain Sky Boo has died a hero's death, his words dripping with a cold, political calculation. Turning to his elite soldiers, he orders them to retrieve Lucas Chin's body from the wreckage, regardless of whether he survived the blast. Amidst the smoldering ruins of the warehouse, the silence is broken only by the sound of heavy coughing as the smoke begins to clear. Haley and Bu Feng struggle to their feet, their bodies battered and bruised, but miraculously still alive after the devastating explosion. They find Qin Xi nearby, his bioarmor cracked and straining as he holds up a massive section of the collapsed building, urging them to flee.